So this is 20th January 2016, and the subject of Poppy Worthington has come up in the news. Poppy Worthington, you've probably heard if you've been in touch with the news. It's a little baby of 13 months who died in 2013, and the issue is that they think, reading in and out around the news, the issue is that the police have done a pretty dreadful job of following it up. A lot of evidence was gone because obviously it was an event of one night that culminated in the death of Poppy Worthington in 2013 up in Barrow-in-Furness, and she died following. This doesn't seem to be argued against in the end. She died following some kind of sexual assault. So she's only 13 months old, she's a little baby. She's still in nappies and stuff. She died following a sexual assault. So if you go online, you can see pictures of her, just little baby. I think she's just about able to sit up maybe, or they'd maybe propped her up for the photograph. But anyway. Now when you don't have much information to go on, you can analyse it only so far. But what I tend to do is analyse it and say how far can we get. There's the Telegraph newspaper, had a whole timeline of everything from the early days to now, and they've only just been able to release information because a judge has finally made a statement in public. But there's been what are called draconian court proceedings taking place, to injunctions or whatever, to make sure that this information, this whole story really, was buried for a couple of years. So it's only just come out. Now, I'm just looking at this now. This is from the Northwest. This is from the Northwest here. Northwest Evening Mail, this newspaper. And I don't know if this date's correct. It starts going on about 2002. I think that might be a misprint. As far as I understand it, this is 2013. It's 2013 that the baby died and ended up going to an ambulance. Now the point is, I printed off the Northwest Evening Mail's information because it gave a timeline, not of the long-running 2 or 3 years to get to this point, but it gave a timeline of the actual night. So you can go by two things when you analyse something that you don't know that much about. You can go by what was said and who it was said by. You can also go by what wasn't said and who it wasn't said by. You say, what? Okay. So one of the first things to notice about this is, I'll just scan through it. Poppy's father, Paul Worthington, this is the guy who's... Nobody's able to quite pin this on Paul Worthington. I'm talking about the guy from Barrow-in-Furness who is the father of this little baby who died, right, in 2013. Not any other Paul Worthington. Unfortunately, loads of Paul Worthingtons are going to come up when you do a search, but it's this guy from Barrow. He's 47 years of age. So Poppy's father said he went to bed at 9 PM. This is on the night of December the 11th, 2013. He went to bed at 9 PM, used his laptop to follow sports and watch pornography, which he described as involving adults, before falling asleep about 10 PM. It then goes on to say how he was woken in the early hours by a scream apparently. He found Poppy sitting in the corner of her cot. She was rigid and stiff. He thought she may have had a bad dream, he said. He picked her up and cuddled her. He says her teeth were clenched as he tried to put a dummy in. She only stopped screaming when he thought she had passed a stool. Blah, blah, blah. It carries on, right? So he goes to sleep, he says, at about 10. At 5:56 AM on December the 12th, which is obviously early morning the next day, that's when the mother, Poppy's mother, rings 999. Allegedly while Mr. Worthington's attempting to perform CPR on his daughter. So there's basically, he said it was in the small hours, the early hours, when he found his baby in this state. Something you need to know is that the mother sleeps downstairs on the settee. Right? I mean, I'm not saying that's awful or anything. What I'm saying is straight away, the baby has been isolated from the mother. You could say that that's not deliberate. Mr. Worthington, I'm sure, will say that's not deliberate. The fact of the matter is, you've got the mother of a 13-month-old baby. The baby's upstairs allegedly in a room on its own, on her own, Poppy, and the mother is downstairs. She's nowhere near. Now, my point is that straight away to me there are alarm bells ringing just with that situation. You don't need to go any further. It's already bad. Another thing that jumps out at me is that it appears that for several hours, however you interpret it, early hours of the morning to me is 2 or 3 in the morning. By the time you get to 4 AM, that's not early hours. So to me, that 2 or 3 in the morning is when this guy's saying he found his daughter. And basically he's saying she appeared to be pretty much lifeless from the get-go. We've had 2 children, and I don't think it made much difference if I hadn't had any children. But we've had 2 children, go through the whole baby process, and if our child, baby, at 13 months, had so much as a snivelling nose, I'd be wanting to get mum within probably 10 or 15 minutes. If the baby's breathing and everything's alright that way, but just a snivelly nose, I might not wake her up to tell the baby the snivelly nose, but it won't be long before the mother, I involve the mother, and vice versa. So my question really is, for 3 hours, at least, if she didn't phone the cops till about 6 o'clock in the morning nearly, then for 3 hours that guy has sort of kept it to himself that this baby's in a bit of a state, as in lifeless, stiff and rigid. He couldn't get the dummy in her mouth because she clenched her teeth shut. Who's not mentioned in this? I'll tell you who's not mentioned. A load of other people described as children. Now this Worthington family, this Paul Worthington guy, there's a load of other children in this house. We don't know how many. We know it's more than 1 because they say children. So let's say it's 2 or more. We don't know what ages they are. Now, children, you could describe your children and actually mean somebody up to 18 or 20 years of age. You know, what do they mean by children? Now, when do children become dangerous? When they get out of control and they're left on their own too much? You know, what I'm saying is, did these unmentioned children who are protected incidentally by law from being mentioned, which up to point is fair enough, these unnamed children, who are they and what are they like? Now I know that the local school will know who they are and what they're like. The father and the mother will know who they are and what they're like. I've got just a suggestion here, just a wild crazy guess, that these children are not related by both parents to Poppy. Now the reason I mention that is because unfortunately when a disaster has occurred, you start to look for what's caused it and where are the fractures, because the fracture points are where something could have started out that caused it. And one of the fracture points is when the parents of the baby are not the same as the parents of the other children. So I'm going to make a wild guess. One or both of these people, Paul Worthington and his spouse, one or both of them has brought other children to this relationship. And they are the parent of those children, but the child is not a full sibling of Poppy. So she doesn't have full brothers or sisters in the house. Make a wild crazy guess that the mother at 37 years old, I think she's 30 something, so she's significantly younger than Paul Worthington at 47. So I'm going to make a wild crazy guess that this is his second time around and they've had the baby. You know, that quite often happens. Nothing wrong with any of that. But it means you have a fracture in the house between, you have effectively 2 sides of the family. If the other kids are all gone, there's no problem really can arise there most of the time. But here they live in the house, it seems, and what you've got is a case where the mother sleeps downstairs in the settee, and I assume everybody else is upstairs. So basically, the mother's totally out of it. and not really able to protect our child in the passive way that you normally are. Us with our babies, we didn't even have our babies into a different room until after they were 12 months old. And that was because I just felt with cot deaths and everything else, I have this theory that babies are better left in the same room as their parents, because then, this is just my belief, the breathing in and out of their parents, babies are very sensitive. I think they take that as a clock. And if they happen to suffer any arrhythmia or breathing problems, I believe that they lock on to the sounds that they hear of their parents breathing. That's just my theory. Could be rubbish. But you know that kids hear much better than adults do. And I think that some cot deaths could be avoided if the baby had just stayed in the same room as the parents. Not the same bed necessarily, but the same room. Because it picks up all these clock signals, which I think early on in a baby's life, just like older in life, some things just don't work too well. The body clock hasn't set in properly. But that's just my theory. Plenty of people have the baby in a separate room. I just don't like it. If somebody's going to break into my house, for example, I'd rather I was in the same room as the baby. Then we all take our chances together, but I am there. Them in another room? Well, if you were a burglar and knew the layout, you could... So, I have umpteen reasons for why I like to have a defenceless baby in the same room as us, in a cot in the corner. And then to check if they're all right, I just have to look over, or I just have to listen. That's the big thing. You just listen to see if the baby's breathing. You can usually hear it quite loudly. It's quite easy to hear in the middle of the night a baby breathing. And you don't even need to look at them. After a while, you know that all that means they're all right. Why would the dad, Paul Worthington, not contact the mother for about 3 hours? She's only downstairs. It's far enough to be a problem, but it's not far enough that you... I mean, to me, if he found his baby like that, about 3 o'clock, by 3:15, the mother would be ringing... If it was me, by 3:15, the mother would be ringing the police. The ambulance. Anyway, it's all gone wrong. But Paul Worthington has not answered questions. He's also got a bit of a track record of the police inviting him in for questioning since 1995. Now, I put it to you that if the lady in this case had known the history of Paul Worthington, she might well never have got together with him in the first place. And I'll just finish with what the judge has said. The judge has said that Paul Worthington... The judge has said that the baby was... this is based on what the pathologist said. The Home Office pathologist said that the baby did have penetrative... some kind of penetrative abuse, and in fact was bleeding from the backside, and there's blood on the nappy and stuff. And that bloodied nappy that got into the ambulance was not kept for evidence. And this is one of the bits where the police have to own up and say that they totally got it wrong. Now that leaves Paul Worthington unable to defend himself, and leaves everybody else wondering, what about poor Poppy? Where was the defence for her? I'll just give you a tip. If you're a parent and in your house there are children who are not fully siblings of the very young baby that you might have, and by young I really mean up to toddler age and so on, any age where really they're not able to communicate properly that something has occurred, which maybe means 5 or 6, really, until they're 5 or 6, you have to really have eyes and ears on that kid, because you don't know what the other children think. In sight of you, they'll behave as good as gold. But you've all seen these closed circuit secret cameras of nannies, and they slap the kid. I mean, you see it from America, and some woman who's a nanny slaps a kid and smacks him flat onto the floor, and he's practically out cold. And all this is hidden from the parents who employ the nanny. What I'm saying to you is that actually you do not know, just to that extent. You have no idea what other children get up to in the house while they are alone with their half-sibling. And if you think, well, that's ridiculous, nothing would go wrong in my house, what I'm saying to you is that we are left with not knowing whether Paul Worthington, the father, has abused that child, or whether one of the other children has done it. Now, bear in mind, we've had some terrible incidents in this country where, like a little boy of 8, I think it was killed by a couple of older boys. They were 10 and 12 or something. And he was just taken away from a shopping mall, and he was taking some disused waste ground, and he was murdered by them with bits of junk that were lying around. So this case, we are left with, I mean, how must the mother feel? But the mother really, she's on a habitual basis ended up not near enough the child to know what's going on, the baby to know what's going on. So Poppy's been left up there on her own with the father and half siblings. The father's already got a history of stuff, and he's actually worked himself up. If he is the type he is alleged to have been abused, the judge says he did have penetrative abuse with that little baby before she died. So that's what the judge has said. He's been watching pornography, which he said involved adults. Look, child abuse pornography, paedophilia involves adults. So I'm very concerned at not only what the guy says in evidence, but what he doesn't say. The fact that he didn't get the mum up right away at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, because if our baby was stiff and rigid, I'd be getting the mother up straight. I'd be cradling the baby, taking them downstairs so as not to leave them for even a minute. CPR and stuff like that, I don't know. You'd try mouth to mouth, wouldn't you? I know it's very difficult with babies because you can damage the lungs. And the fact he's trying CPR at 6 in the morning, I bet that baby was well dead by then. I bet Poppy was well dead by 6 in the morning. That sounds to me, you see, like window dressing. That sounds to me like somebody saying, you call the ambulance, darling, while I do CPR, you know, big notice, the father's doing CPR. That sounds a bit like somebody advertising they're doing CPR at just the right moment so that, you know, it looks like an evidential thing that he's doing CPR, so therefore he's not to blame for the baby dying and he cares about her and all that. Terrible business. So what's not said is a whole lot. We don't know anything about the background of these other children, and that's a massive set of question marks there. This guy has got some kind of questioning going back on a couple of occasions back to 1995, and we don't know what's going on there, but it's not good. And he's not got the mother involved until hours later. God, I mean, that is so far wrong that if he didn't abuse the baby and kill her, and she had a fractured leg, by the way, then there's a massive question mark over what he would let happen to the baby. I mean, it's quite possible the father discovered one of the other children, who of course he may have allegiance to, doing something with a baby, and then what's he going to do, right? I mean, I know what you have to do, but in the actual situation, some people might not be able to step up to the plate. So it's a shocking case. The police let everybody down, and the father, I have no respect for the father. That sounds like a terrible thing has happened, and he's pretty much, if not been involved directly in causing the child's death, he's pretty much let it happen. And the mother has absented herself. You know, being a floor away, you can't hear what's going on. Next time round, you don't want to do it that way. And there's so many things wrong with this. I don't think you can ever put it right now. So, poor Poppy, that's all I've got to say. Poor kid let down by everybody. Mother, father, half siblings, the system. Terrible. Thank you for watching and listening.